And just like that, we have another Star Wars show in the books. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm giving you my ranking of every Star Wars TV show. Now, I want to make some rules clear before I get into this thing. This does not include the Clone Wars micro-series because it's not canon. It doesn't include Star Wars Visions because it's not canon. It does not include Star Wars Resistance because I've never watched it. And it doesn't include stuff like Young Jedi Adventures or Ewoks. It's just the Star Wars shows that are canon that I have seen. So before I get in this list, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below your favorite and least favorite Star Wars TV shows, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And check out the Unusual Couple podcast linked down below for weekly podcast episodes. We're really having a blast with it right now. All right, so I have 8 shows, and without further ado, let's just dive into this ranking. Coming in dead last for me is The Bad Batch. Now, this is a show that I enjoy. It's got its moments to shine. It's really cool to explore this time period of Star Wars, you know, right after Order 66, essentially, between episodes 3 and 4. You've got this elite squadron of clone troopers, and they are sort of on the run through most of this show. They're going on these little missions throughout the galaxy. The camaraderie between them is definitely neat, and how they all function as a unit. Think like Avengers for clones, essentially. It's pretty cool. That being said, a lot of this does just feel like Clone Wars filler. There's a lot of Clone Wars episodes that are throwaway filler, designed for, you know, the little kid audience, and there's not much brought to the table. That's kind of how I feel with The Bad Batch. I really dig certain moments, but overall, this is probably the least memorable Star Wars Disney Plus show to me. But coming in at number 7 on my list is going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is wild to sit here and say. If you asked me years ago, hey, they're going to make an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, and it's going to be one of your least favorite Star Wars shows, I would have said, bull, you're a liar. And here we are today. I love the idea of an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, but I think it would function much better as a film. The big issue with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show is that it never really focuses on Obi-Wan solely, which is what it should have been. He's literally the titular character. It should have been about him and Vader and their relationship through the Force, and, you know, Obi-Wan dealing with the realization that Anakin is alive as Vader. All of these things would have been much cooler to explore. Instead, we got a young Leia plotline. We've got Reva and the Inquisitors. There's way too much going on for a 6-episode series that's supposed to be focused on Obi-Wan, and it would have been much more meaningful if it was just Obi-Wan on this journey, literally just him. Like, a lot of the show could be silence, visual storytelling, where we see him walking through the desert. Instead, they shoehorn in this little Leia plotline and the Reva stuff, which was just insufferable at times, really. It brought the show down a whole level for me, and by the end of it, it felt like, oh, this show exists just to try and please Star Wars fans. Here's Qui-Gon, here's Vader versus Obi-Wan rematch. I don't even acknowledge this when I watch New Hope because it doesn't feel right. Obviously, we had Revenge of the Sith lead into A New Hope, and to me, that's the last time these two met. Like, when I go watch A New Hope, I don't even acknowledge their duel or duels, I should say, in this show. It just doesn't mean anything to me because it feels so empty and frankly just like corporate forced. Look, I think the cast is great. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, gotta love them as that duo. But there was really no need for the show to exist, and I stand by that. I stand by that. It is one of the least memorable Star Wars shows, and it's a damn shame because Obi-Wan Kenobi is a top 2 Star Wars character for me. Him and Han Solo are always fighting for that spot, that title for me. And I just can't sit here and confidently say, oh, I love Obi-Wan. It's a big bummer, big disappointment. In fact, one step above that at number 6 for me is The Book of Boba Fett, which I think structurally is a stronger show than Obi-Wan Kenobi. That being said, the first 4 episodes of The Book of Boba Fett are a drag, and not the good kind of slow burn, a legitimate drag where it's just a lot of this flashback timeline to Boba with the Tusken Raiders, and then you've got the main storyline that's just painfully uninteresting with Boba being like the king of Tatooine, essentially, right? Because Jabba the Hutt's no longer there. It's now pretty much Boba's job as they took down Bib Fortuna. But anyway, it's not the most interesting show. One of the episodes, they introduce a bunch of side characters, and there's this stupid chase through the streets. Lame, honestly, just lame. But I never really felt that connected to the Tusken Raider storyline. There were some cool visuals, don't get me wrong, but we all knew Boba Fett was going to make it back to The Mandalorian Season 2, because it took place between, you know, Return of the Jedi and when we see him in Mando Season 2, and there's not a lot of stakes there. And it always felt like, oh, well, maybe the Tusken Raiders are going to come back and later and play a prominent role, and they never really did. They just tried to add more depth to Boba, and it was a failed attempt in my opinion. That being said, when we get to the 5th episode, it becomes The Mandalorian Season 2.5, and I'm here for that. I was so fed up and bored, frankly, with the first 4 episodes. I was like, I really don't mind this change of pace, this change of direction for the show. We're getting Mando with a darksaber, and we're learning more about Mandalore. Hell yes to that. Then you roll into episode 6, and you've got Luke training Grogu, and you've got Ahsoka meeting Luke. Things I never thought I would see in Star Wars right there. Those 2 episodes make up for the rest of the show being pretty uninteresting. Of course, you've got a forced finale where Mando ends up going with Boba because he owes him a favor, and they have some fights in the streets. They're fighting like these massive droids, pretty much. Think like massive scale droidicas, essentially, and it was just like, this is pretty like low stakes and also just not the most interesting. And I totally forgot to mention Cad Bane's in here. So there's a lot of Star Wars fan service, and a lot of people have said, oh, Boba Fett's just fan service, and I can hear you, but it works at times. Where it functions best is The Mandalorian Season 2.5, and I stand by this. We should have never gotten the Book of Boba Fett. We should have just had a Boba Fett subplot in The Mandalorian Season 3. And they could have started Mando Season 3 with Episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, and I think Star Wars would have been better for it, because we saw Mando Season 3, we'll talk about that later, and it was the weakest for sure. But look, the Book of Boba Fett has more memorable moments than Obi-Wan to me. I love the Mandalorian as a character. It gave us Luke, Cad Bane live action, all these things. As a Star Wars fan, that was more rewarding than a forced story of Obi-Wan in between episodes 3 and 4. So at the end of the day, Boba Fett edges it out, surprisingly. At number 5 on my list, I've got Ahsoka. This is a show that I really enjoyed for the most part. I mean, the way I describe it is, it's a Star Wars hangout show. You've got Ahsoka with Sabine, and it just feels like they're just vibing in a way, like finding their groove again. But then obviously we find out that there are some remnants of the Empire out there trying to bring Thrawn back to the main galaxy of Star Wars. Ezra's out there. Obviously, Sabine wants to find Ezra. So these things continue to unfold, and it functions as a Rebels sequel in a way, in live-action form, but also as a Clone Wars live-action sequel at times, as we see Anakin Skywalker having a prominent role in certain episodes in the show. And we dive into this idea of Ahsoka stepping into the role of Master with Sabine. So there's a lot to love as a Star Wars fan here. Thrawn has just got such a looming screen presence. He's a great villain. I don't think we got enough of him here, but it was still nice to kind of call back to Rebels a lot with him. My issue with this show is it had a good thing going for about 4 or 5 episodes, and then around episode 6, 7, 8, it started to lose its footing. And what I mean by that is, it never really felt like there was a clear direction or goal for our main heroes here. Obviously, Sabine ends up on that ship that goes out to where Thrawn is, and that's where Ezra is as well, but it's not like that was ever in the plan. And then once they get to Ezra, and he's like, took you long enough, there's really no urgency. Which was wild. We just kind of hang out, and we have this whole episode with these turtles, and they're fighting, and it's like, okay. And then you get to the finale, and it's like we ended up where we began. Technically, Ezra got home, but Sabine and Ahsoka are now where Ezra was, and Thrawn is back. So everyone failed, and there's no greenlit season 2 just yet, so it's kind of hard to be too excited about the future. I love the hangout vibes, further exploration of, Jedi lore, especially between Anakin and Ahsoka. That was a strong point, but I can't help but feel like at times this show is a little too fan service. Like, oh, here's C-3PO, here's Anakin. It was just throwing stuff at the wall to try and please Star Wars fans, and I've kind of awakened to that over the years, that Star Wars on Disney Plus loves to do that to a fault at times. As awesome as it is, it does sacrifice the actual storytelling a lot of the times. Through and through, I enjoyed Ahsoka, don't get me wrong. I do think it just had a pretty underwhelming last few episodes and lost its way a bit. I like the show, it just had potential to be like upper tier Star Wars for me, and it's not that in my opinion at the end of the day. At number 4 on my list, I've got Star Wars Rebels, and I enjoy the hell out of this show. It explores this new group of characters, gives us a new Star Wars family in the time before A New Hope. Between episodes 3 and 4, I mean, they've done so much content in there, and it's a goldmine. There's so many ideas to explore. Obviously, at one point in the show, you've got Maul having a big role. Thrawn is introduced here. Lando and Leia make appearances. There's so much to appreciate as a Star Wars fan here, and it gives us a great new Jedi Master in Kanan as he takes on Ezra as his apprentice. You've got a new family, legitimately, and one of the best in Star Wars. They shouldn't work on paper. Think Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's like this ragtag group of heroes who form a family bond, and then you can't help but love them. That's exactly what Star Wars Rebels is. And if you haven't given the show a chance because you think it's too kiddie, I encourage you to go give it a go. It's on Disney Plus right now. Sure, some of the episodes are targeted probably towards like 7 to 8-year-old kids because it aired on Disney XD originally, but it explores so much mythology within Star Wars. It gives us great Maul content. Obi-Wan has a role here at times. Like, Darth Vader is in here. I really encourage you to at least watch the final few episodes of season 2, and if that doesn't sell you on the show, I don't know what will, because it gives us so much to love as Star Wars fans. Like, you've got the new family and their little missions they go on, but it pushes the Star Wars timeline forward in a way I didn't think was possible, and there's a lot of payoff if you watch this and then directly watch Ahsoka. Rebels is delightful. I think it's one of the most underseen Star Wars projects. I'm not going to sit here and say it's underrated, because people who watch it end up really liking it, but it's underseen. Not a lot of people give this one a chance when they really should. At number 3 on my list, I've got The Mandalorian. Seasons 1 and 2 of this show, all-time Star Wars content to me personally. I was sat on a week-to-week basis, could not wait. Season 1 ended with a bang, and it's just a great little contained story. Detached from the Skywalker saga, it feels like, for the most part. Then you get in Season 2, we get, Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Luke Skywalker shows up at the end. A lot of awesome things to love as a Star Wars fan. At times, is a little, oh, here's this, we're going to flash in front of your face and give you this awesome moment. Yeah, but I ate it up, because it actually made sense within the timeline. Like, Luke picking up Grogu at the end of Season 2 makes perfect and total sense. Also, we got Ahsoka, like a Season 2 of The Mandalorian, incredible Star Wars TV. Then you roll into Season 3, and that's where the show drops off in quality. It never really knows who the main character is. Does it want to be a Bo-Katan show? Does it want to be a Mandalorian show? Or does it want to be no one's show? There's episodes that have pretty much neither of the characters I just mentioned, and they fall flat. Like, there was no real reason for The Mandalorian Season 3 to exist. Obviously, they wanted to figure out who's going to end up ruling Mandalore, but I felt like the Darksaber plotline went to waste. And I felt like a lot of this season went to waste, honestly. Behind the scenes, I don't think Pedro Pascal wants to be involved anymore, as he's just doing voice work. I heard he was like never even on set, which checks out. It just feels lazy. It feels lazy, and as much as I love Bo-Katan as a character, I don't know if she can carry an entire show. Mando and Grogu were content at the beginning of the season. They're content at the end of the season. I don't really see a place for them to return in Star Wars if not to sell merchandise for Grogu, you know what I'm saying? So I just question a lot of decisions made in Season 3. Obviously, it gave us some lore about Mandalorians and cool moments for sure. Moff Gideon, though, gone too soon? Is he actually gone? Like, what's the deal? I get they're trying to bridge the gap, between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, but I can't help but say Season 3 was a big step down. I love 1 and 2. We'll see if we get a Season 4, and if so, hopefully it's on par with those first 2 seasons. I love this content. I think the template was there for the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian to be this detached Star Wars story about this bounty hunter and his quest through the galaxy. I was eating that up for the first 2 seasons. Season 3, it kind of lost focus in any real direction, which is a bummer. Let's hope Season 4 is great when you eventually do get it. My runner-up on my list is Andor. This is a fantastic TV show that feels more like a straight-up drama than actually Star Wars, which to me works to its benefit. And a lot of people will use that as a con and say it doesn't feel like Star Wars. And that's the good thing about it. It takes place in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't have to deal with Jedi or Sith. It is just a story of Cassian Andor joining in with the rebellion fighting against the Empire. We learn more about this character, and we see the cruelties and the harsh reality of the Empire during this time period of Star Wars. It also helps that it's actually adding more depth to Cassian before Rogue One, as he is one of the main characters in that movie. So I feel like once this show finishes, it's only going to be 2 seasons. Once the second season's complete, we can view Rogue One in an entirely different light. So it's still connected in a way, but it feels detached, which is for the better. And the way it's told is very Clone Wars. What I mean by that is there are episode arcs where there's payoff at the end. One involving a prison break, one involving a heist, one involving this utter riot and chaos in the streets, but it's so satisfying as a viewer. Like, the show is a slow burn, I won't lie to you. Like, there are episodes that aren't action-packed, they're more drama, dialogue-driven, and I eat that up because it's in the Star Wars universe and we're seeing the politics of it all unfold. Almost feels Game of Thrones in a way. I've always been a fan of stuff like that, so it just works. It's well-written, well-directed. It feels like an actual high-quality show, not just something Disney created to be like, oh, here's more Star Wars for you guys. Like, it has purpose. There is heart behind every performance and character decision. And I kid you not, when I watched the Prison Break episode and we see Andy Serkis's character, Kino Loy, giving that speech, I can't even finish talking. It gives me chills that much. I think I have to pull that up on YouTube after this, and then I'll probably want to run a marathon. Like, I kid you not, incredible Star Wars content. In fact, it would be spoilery, but if you need to be sold on Andor, I'm telling you right now, if you haven't watched it or if you're like, oh, it's boring, I can't get into it, I'm going to tell you to do this. Look up the Prison Break speech, One Way Out. Look that up. You will want to watch Andor just because it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. It's like, I can't get enough of this show. I can't wait for Season 2. It's elite Star Wars content. I think it's the best crafted Star Wars show, But it's not number one because I am doing this off my personal favorite and nostalgia, and I don't care. Say what you want in the comments. It's my list, my favorites. My number one is Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I grew up watching this show on Friday nights. I'd stay up late. On Saturday mornings, I'd watch it. I adore it, and it expands upon the prequels. You know, it takes place between episodes 2 and 3, so it really does fill in the gap and adds to Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's relationship, but most importantly, Ahsoka and Anakin Skywalker's relationship. The Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie launched this entire series, and then from there, the series is told in a weird order. In fact, they didn't air everything in chronological order, which was a bit weird, so if you've never watched Clone Wars, if you want to rewatch it, you should go to the Star Wars website and look at the official order of episodes. That is the most beneficial way to do this. But with that being said, I mean, this gave us everything I wanted as a Star Wars fan, especially as an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid when the seasons were coming out. We got exploration of the clones, and they actually had meaning and names and relationships. Like, you could feel for the clone troopers. When you go watch Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, they're just these CGI dudes, but in this show, they're humanized. These dudes are soldiers, and it paints them as that. They're soldiers. They have their issues in life, and I love the exploration of that. But there's a further exploration of the Force and Jedi in here with the Mortis trilogy, with, you know, the Umbara arc, which speaks to the clone troopers versus Jedi. I mean, good versus evil, dark versus light. You want to see that on full force? There are a lot of awesome Clone Wars arcs here. And then, of course, you got Season 7, which gave us the Siege of Mandalore, Star Wars movie level good, like elite stuff right there. Darth Maul comes back, Savage Opress is in here, Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku. You name it, there's some awesome Jedi on display here. You've got bounty hunter antics. And then, of course, you got your fair share of throwaway episodes with, you know, Jar Jar or droids. It's just like made for kids at the end of the day. So there's going to be those highlights, but there's also going to be those episodes that are like, this is pretty weak. I adore Star Wars: The Clone Wars, though, through thick and thin. Like, obviously, there are a lot of throwaway arcs and episodes that are just really geared toward, like, 8-year-old kids. But as an 8-year-old kid, I was like, this is pretty entertaining. I go back and watch it now, and I'm like, I can do without this. But the pros far outweigh the cons. The nostalgia is real, and Star Wars: The Clone Wars almost did the impossible at the time, and it made people appreciate the prequel trilogy 10 times more. It added so much depth to those movies and makes them even more watchable. Star Wars: The Clone Wars is a special show that I will always hold near and dear to my heart. But that's just my ranking of all the Star Wars TV shows. Let me know yours in the comments down below, and be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And of course, check out the podcast, link down below. Anything goes a long way over there. But thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.